Hello friends, now I'll be reading the Hindu editorial from 24th February 2023 at 100 words per minute in 5 seconds. Begin. A 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court of India is presently hearing a set of cases popularly known as the Maharashtra political controversy cases. These cases arose out of the events in June last year when the ruling Maha Vikas Agadi coalition lost power after an internal splintering of the Shiva Sena party. A faction led by Eknath Shinde then lost hands with the Bharatiya Janata Party to form the new ruling coalition. The disputes between the various parties have been continuing since then, with the most recent development being an election commission of India order declaring that Eknath Shinde's faction is entitled to the party name and symbol. While questions have been raised about whether the situation is now fait accompli and whether the court can turn the clock back if it wanted to. The judgment of this case will have consequences not merely for state politics in Maharashtra but far beyond as well. This is because the case raises certain fundamental issues about the working of India's anti-defection law. The anti-defection law was introduced into the constitution via the 10th schedule in 1985. Its purpose was to check increasingly frequent floor crossing lured by money, ministerial berths, threats, or a combination of the three. Legislators were regularly switching party affiliations in the House. The 10th schedule sought to put an end to this by stipulating that if any legislator voted against the party whip, he or she would be disqualified from the House. While on the one hand, this empowered party leadership against the legislative backbench and weakened the prospect of intra-party dissent, the 10th schedule viewed this as an acceptable compromise in the interest of checking unprincipled floor crossing. Fast forwarding 40 years to the present day, we find that the working of the 10th schedule has been patchy at best. In the last few years, there have been innumerable instances of governments being toppled mid-term after a set of the ruling party or coalition's own members turn against it. That this is power politics and no high-minded expression of intra-party dissent is evident from the well-documented rise of resort politics where party leaders hold their flock more or less captive within expensive holiday resorts so as to prevent the other side from getting at them. Indeed, politicians have adopted various stratagems to do an end run around the anti-defection law. Recent examples involve mass resignations to force a fresh election, partisan actions to state governors with respect to swearing in ceremonies and the timings of floor tests, and equally partisan actions by speakers. The upshot of this is that, in effect, the 10th schedule has been reduced to nullity. Governments that do not have clear majorities are vulnerable at any point to being toppled in this fashion. This is where the role of the Supreme Court becomes crucial. Disputes over government formation and government toppling invariably end by before the highest court. It must immediately be acknowledged that such cases place the court in an unenviable position. The court has to adjudicate the actions of a number of constitutional functionaries, governors, speakers, legislative party leaders, elected representatives, many of whom, to put it charitably, have acted dubiously. But the court does not have the liberty of presuming dishonesty. It must maintain an institutional arm's length from the political actors and adjudicate according to legalities, even as political actors in anti defection law cases do their best to undermine legality. This is a challenging task, but it is a challenge that the court has, with due respect, not always risen to. This is one of those situations where the proof of the pudding is in the eating, despite the fact that the court's intervention has been sought in every one of these cases, and despite the fact that in recent years the Supreme Court has handed down multiple substantive judgments on anti defection. The toppling of governments remains as frequent as ever. While one may put this down to wily politicians finding loopholes in Supreme Court judgments, much like they find loopholes in the 10th schedule, this is not all there is to the situation. Some of these loopholes were easily foreseeable at the time, but were unfortunately not addressed by the court. An example of this is the court's judgment in the Karnataka political controversy, which effectively sanctified resignations as an end run around the anti defection clause. But it is the present case that presents an interesting case study. One will recall that the crisis, so to say, begin with a set of legislators from the Shiv Sena rebelled against Uddhav Thackeray and were soon ensconced in a resort on Guwahati. The deputy speaker moved the qualify the rebels, who in turn moved the court, arguing that there was a pending no confidence motion against the deputy speaker, and therefore, as per the Supreme Court's judgment in Nabam Sibia, he was disqualified from deciding on the disqualifications while it was pending. The Supreme Court's vacation bench stayed the deputy speaker's hand, but in what can only be described as a very curious set of orders also directed a floor test. The upshot of this was that the rebel MLAs were able to vote in this floor test and voted to bring the government down. The new government was swiftly sworn in and appointed its own speaker, thus effectively creating a fait accompli with respect to the pending disqualification petitions. To top it all, the Supreme Court's orders were interim in nature and therefore no reasons were provided. Stop. Please join the Telegram group in the comment box for the PDF. Thank you.